Hey folks, this is Rhykker, and while Season 5 of Diablo 4 continues to be a big success, there's one major pain point for a lot of people that remains. We'll discuss that and other Diablo 4 news of the week, and later on in the video we'll also talk about the big controversy of the journalists that broke a gentleman's agreement with Valve and published an article about their upcoming unreleased game that they got to test. And we'll also cover some news about Geralt's role in the next Witcher game. People seem to be split on whether they're happy or not. But starting with Diablo 4, if you still haven't checked out Season 5, I've got my ultimate guide and my class tier list videos, which you can find on my website, Rhykker.com, which brings us to a word from this video's sponsor, Squarespace. I built my website using Squarespace, and I was able to do everything myself, quickly and easily, and with zero education in the field, all thanks to how easy Squarespace is to work with. Squarespace even has a new AI tool called Squarespace Blueprint to make setting up a website easier than ever, uniquely tailored to your brand or business, and optimized for viewing on every device. It even has optimized SEO tools so that you can launch your website and start getting views as quickly as possible. Squarespace is flexible for any kind of website with tons of design options to pick from. You can easily connect all your social accounts and also upload your video content and organize your video library. You can sell products or services and offer flexible payment options, including buy now and pay later plans with Afterpay and ClearPay. Basically, if you want to build a website, I recommend Squarespace. So head to squarespace.com/Rhykker or click the link in the description to start your free trial and use code Rhykker to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. That's squarespace.com/RHYKKER and use code Rhykker. So, Diablo news. First off, Gamescom is right around the corner. It runs from Wednesday, August 21st to Sunday, August 25th, and Diablo 4 will have a presence there. The Xbox at Gamescom livestream begins on the 21st at 6 a.m. Pacific, that's 3 p.m. CST, and Xbox's games on the schedule for Wednesday include Diablo 4 Vessel of Hatred, Diablo Immortal, Stalker 2, Atomfall, Starfield Shattered Space, Age of Mythology Retold, and then they put in smaller print, whatever that means, Overwatch 2, Forza Horizon 5, Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, Dustborn, and more. Now, the fact that Diablo 4 is listed first suggests it'll be one of the major topics of the stream. Possibly even the first that they cover, so get up early. Or don't, just wait for me to post my video recap of the event later in the day. I'm expecting some major expansion news, probably some talk about the new raid, or the co-op dungeon as they call it, more details on mercenaries maybe, and we may even get a confirmation or a debunk of the change to the level cap and what that could mean for the game. So stay tuned next week for all that. We also got this week confirmation from Adam Fletcher that when the expansion releases, you'll have to complete the expansion campaign one time before you're able to skip it. Not a big surprise there, but it's confirmation. We got patch notes for a patch releasing next week on the 20th, which will see a buff to the Infernal Horde's Infernal offerings related to Elites and Burning Rain. This may actually make the Elite options competitive with the Hellborn ones now. We'll have to see. Also on the 20th, we'll begin another Mother's Blessing event. Until August 27th, we'll get a 35% XP buff and 50% gold find buff. So it'll be the perfect time to level up alts and farm a bunch of sparks to craft our mythics. Oh, and while doing so, don't forget to use the leveling chests from the Alchemist. This is something they added to help with alt leveling. They're available to craft between levels 20 and 50, and they're a great way to get some aspects for your new class. Meanwhile, the major D4 headline this week was a duping exploit that forced Blizzard to completely disable all forms of player trade while they address it, which I think that makes us for 5 out of 5 seasons in which this has happened. And trading has since been re-enabled. Duping has plagued Diablo since the D2 days, hell, technically the Diablo 1 days, but it's in Diablo 2 that it became a problem. Other than that though, Season 5 continues to be a big success. It's the best season yet. And looking at my own polled data here, the general sentiment is D4 good now. Though a lot of people have been so burned that they haven't even given Season 5 a try yet. Infernal Hordes have been incredibly well received. Oh, pro tip for those, to optimize your ether gains, pick all the Hellborn options. And farm on tier 7 once you can comfortably handle farming tier 7. Tier 8 only gives slightly better rewards for a lot more time and effort. Tier 7 is really where the efficiency is. But yeah, gameplay of Infernal Hordes is some of the most fun in the game tons of action, tons of monsters, tons of events, variety. Arguably the only downside is that you remain in this same room forever, so you don't really get a nice change of scenery there. They also made Infernal events extremely rewarding now, to the detriment of other activities in the game. Although, I think that's okay for Season 5, with Infernal Hordes being the star attraction of the season. But currently we basically have no reason to do pits or whispers, and that's likely something to be addressed for Season 6. And while this season is a big success, we're still going to bring up a few criticisms or pain points where there may still be room for improvement, because again, we want the game to be as good as it can be. And the current state of pits is one of the things that probably needs to be worked on here. Pit bosses have more health than they did in Season 4, so once again, we've gone a step backwards to a point where, again, you're breezing through a pit, and then you get to the boss, and then everything slows down, and it just becomes a slog compared to the rest. There's a big disconnect between the boss and everything that comes before the boss. And right now, it's just far more fun and efficient to farm masterworking materials in Infernal Hordes than it is in the pit. Similarly, whispers. Previously, you would do whispers to farm gold, but now we can do that in the pit massively more effectively, so whispers are almost useless. And of course, last week we spoke about nightmare dungeons. I think something needs to be looked at here with all these activities in general to ensure they're all fun and rewarding. My ideal endgame is one in which we have a variety of fun, rewarding activities to choose to engage with, and that none of them feel like chores we have to do. Or at least there's enough variety in things to do that players with different tastes can find multiple things that they want to engage with. And I do think with more content continuing to be added over time, we're really getting there. The game has expanded significantly since a year, from this date. Another thing, similar to pit bosses, world bosses take a lot longer to take down now. This is because of the new resilience mechanic. And the irony here is people have complained for a while that world bosses are a joke. They get taken down in 10 seconds, and it seems like to address that, Blizzard just made the fight take longer by nerfing and equalizing our damage. And the thing is, world bosses remain a joke. This has not changed that. They're not more difficult to defeat, they just take longer now. The same people who are obliterating world bosses while asleep at the wheel on piloting a build that doesn't take any damage from the world boss, they're still doing that. But now the fight just takes 4 minutes instead of 10 seconds. Now, in fairness, this does improve the experience for players who aren't piloting top-tier builds and for whom the world boss is deadly and a challenge, so I gotta acknowledge this has improved things for some people. Previously, those people didn't get to experience the challenge of the boss because he'd just be dead before you can even threaten them. So, I guess it's a step in the right direction, but I'm gonna continue to insist that we should probably have some system similar to tormented bosses where we can get a tormented world boss. And this tormented world boss will be a challenge for those top builds. And it's going to be rewarding enough that the top builds will want to do it. And somehow people that are not capable of handling that content are locked out of it, so that they're not going to be able to just go there and get carried the way it was basically happening with regular world bosses. This way the top builds get to face a challenge with appropriate rewards, and the non-top builds still get their tough current world boss fight. Outside of that, some other minor stuff. While, we have a lot of really cool builds this season, which is fantastic, there's increasing amounts of spam as we're getting more powers that let us, apply effects that duplicate and create multiple projectiles and bounce AoEs and whatever all around the screen. Visual clutter is becoming an increasing problem, whether it's tornadoes or fireballs or what have you. It's super fun, but if it's not you doing it, it can be really annoying when, okay, I'm in Helltide, there's red everywhere, there's red fireballs from enemies, there's red rain coming down, and then there's this sorcerer coming in with his red fireballs filling up the whole screen. It's red on red on red. I don't know what's going on. I can't tell what's a enemy effect, what's a player effect. Having some UI option or something to make spell effects from other players, maybe semi-translucent or otherwise reduced somehow, just to cut down on the visual clutter without making these things less cool and impactful and significant, at least to the players who are casting these spells. would be nice. Another small thing, conduit shrines. They could use a rework at this point. For most high-end builds, you click a conduit, you immediately curse because you did it by accident without thinking, and now your build is nerfed. You are weaker now that you've clicked a conduit. Having conduits behave like they were in D3, where it doesn't transform you. You keep your current build, you can keep playing normally, but now lightning is just shooting out of you everywhere, damaging enemies. I think that would make conduits useful again in D4. In the meantime, though, if you do accidentally click on a conduit, apparently you can just right-click on the buff icon to get out of conduit form, so there is that. Then, of course, an armory or a wardrobe or build saver, whatever you want to call it, that is becoming increasingly important with every passing season as we shift the focus of the game away from getting one build to level 100 and perfect gear to now we're really getting multiple builds together on multiple characters, or even just one character exploring multiple different builds. If you're playing Sorceress this season, for instance, there's so many builds to try. And again, having some easy way to swap between builds, even if it's at a gold cost, is just becoming increasingly important, and the devs are aware that we want this wardrobe. This question keeps being asked every time there's a campfire chat. They keep saying they're aware, and it sounds like they're working on it, but it's going to take time, so hopefully in time for the expansion, we'll see. Another thing, compasses, infernal compasses are cluttering up our inventory. It's a small annoyance. Yes, we could just salvage them, and that's what you ought to do. There's no reason to have 80 billion compasses stored in your stash. Just salvage them and then craft them when you need them. But, you know, how about we just don't get all this clutter? You know, maybe we don't have to do this menial busy work of salvaging them. Why don't we just get the materials instead? Or, you know, some people are saying make them stack. Harder to implement. Also a solution, though. Hopefully this is something that can be addressed for Season 6. In the meantime, it's not the end of the world to have to just salvage a bunch of sigils, but again, it's just a little bit of tedium for no reason. Then we got sorcerers who are in a wonderful place this season. Blizzard did an amazing job addressing all of our criticisms and making sorcerers great again. You know, that was one of the biggest criticisms from the PTR, and they completely turned things around. Outstanding. I do expect Lightning Spear to get nerfed for Season 6. It actually got modified, technically nerfed, in a hotfix that went live on late Thursday or mid-Thursday. People are reporting it doesn't seem to really affect performance in Infernal Hordes, but if you're pushing like 150 plus pit, that's where you feel the nerf. Effectively, they've added, I believe, they've added some internal cooldown on how often the lightning can trigger, which, again, the build is so powerful that it doesn't make a big difference in Infernal Hordes, but once you're, again, pushing the highest content in the game in the pit, that's where you feel the loss in power. Overall, though, again, Lightning Spear, I'm running this build. I love it. It's crazy strong. I fully expect it to be nerfed. Hopefully not killed. I don't want to see it killed, but, you know, brought down a little bit. It does seem like it's overperforming relative to a lot of other builds in the game. But outside of that, I think one issue that's kind of left with sorcerers, not a major issue, but it would just be something that would be nice. Right now, they're very reliant on burning. So the Firebolt enchantment is used in so many builds. There are so many powerful synergies around burning enemies, and Firebolt enchant is such a reliable way to apply burning. So it'd just be nice to see the meta arrive in a place where we don't have most builds running Firebolt enchant. Now, whether that means a rework to Firebolt enchant, not apply burning and do something else, or buffs to other enchants to make them more attractive options, either or. But petty things aside, or smaller things aside, the biggest pain point that remains in Diablo 4 at this point is probably gotta be tempering. Specifically, bricking. Yes, it has been improved since Season 4 thanks to greater affixes giving us extra temper attempts, but bricking items is still a big complaint that I see in the community, with a lot of people really lamenting items getting bricked. Now, I do not ever advocate for making the game easier. Even when others are advocating for it, faster to level on all this, I've never pushed for this. And in this case, I am not advocating for making the game easier. What I am advocating for is for fun and for joy. And the existence of bricking removes a lot of the joy that I get from getting item drops. Because now I could only momentarily get happy when I see a 3 greater affix item drop before I remember that, oh, well, odds are I'm gonna brick this. So there's just no point in getting excited about anything until I've successfully tempered it. So it's taking away that moment of excitement or dampening it significantly when I get the sobering realization that it's probably going to turn into a brick. In fact, the excitement has almost turned to dread. Now, one can argue that tempering isn't all that different from past Diablo games where we had to identify items, right? Something would drop, it would be unidentified, you would get excited. You didn't know what it was yet, you had a vague idea based on the item type, but like, either you couldn't know exactly what the item was, which unique, for instance, or you didn't know what it would roll. So theoretically, you get very excited for a potential exciting drop, like a ring, a unique ring. Could it be a Stone of Jordan? And you open it up, and it's not a Stone of Jordan, and you maybe get a moment of disappointment, or it is the unique that you want, but it rolls poorly. So you can kind of argue, well, bricking is the same thing, right? You get the item, and you don't know for sure whether it's gonna be good or not until you temper it. But for whatever reason, the psychology of it, bricking an item with tempering feels significantly worse than identifying an item and it being garbage. And I think, my theory, is that the reason is that acting upon a good item with my own agency and causing it to become a brick is a very, very bad feeling. Identifying an item, I didn't cause that. The item was already predetermined by randomness to be whatever it was going to be. Whereas with tempering, I actively make the item bad. It just feels different psychologically. It feels worse. So bricking is robbing me of being able to be excited about legendary drops and causing me to feel frustrated about ruining good items. So if there's a way to address those two things without making the game easier, I would love to hear solutions there. Because obviously just giving us infinite tempering attempts would just make the game significantly easier. Now, thankfully, we actually know that devs are indeed looking at tempering. They have heard us. Adam Fletcher posted on Reddit, quote, "We have some further items to talk about regarding tempering in the future to help out with some of the pain points still." Great to hear. And then to round up the Diablo news, in Diablo 2 news, Ladder Season 8 for D2 Resurrected begins on August 23rd, with a patch releasing on August 20th. The patch only includes a few bug fixes, and Season 8 does not introduce anything new or any changes to the game. Now, to follow up on the data mined Frostmourne model in Diablo 4, we got some more interesting things going on now. The Overwatch 2 Season 12 trailer ends with an appearance by the famous Warcraft sword. As a reminder, WoW had data mined during the Season 5 PTR for Diablo 4 a full model of Frostmourne. And this is different from the mount trophy of Frostmourne, which was added to the game a few months ago, because that was only half of the sword. So we got the full model being data mined now in Season 5. We have Frostmourne appearing in Overwatch. This further reinforces my belief, I don't know for sure, but it's a theory, that we're going to get some kind of crossover event happening in Diablo 4, probably in Overwatch 2 now, because we got it in Diablo Immortal about a month ago. A Warcraft event let us earn the Frostmourne cosmetic in-game. On to some Baldur's Gate 3 news. An impossible ending has been discovered. Now, I won't give away any spoilers here, but I'll drop a link in the description for those who want to check it out. We're 1 year into the life of the game, and in celebration, Larian has revealed what ending is the rarest. Again, no spoilers, I won't tell you which one, but the rarest ending, only 34 players have gotten in 1 year of play. Yeah. Baldur's Gate 3 is a game in which you have many decisions to make, and your decisions actually matter. They shape what ending you get. And, well, YouTuber SlimX dug into this rarest ending and found, within the game files, some little magic that he worked up, a variant of this ending that seems to actually be impossible for us to get. Again, you can check out his video, link in the description, to see the ending play out for yourself, but currently there seems to be no combination of choices that we can make to let us get this impossible ending. So why is it in the game? Why is it in the game files? How was he able to find it? Why did Larian actually build out this ending? Well, one theory, and what I assume to be the case, is that there actually was a time during development when this ending was possible, but then after either rewrites or content cuts, the pathway to this ending was cut off, and now it exists only as an Easter egg. Okay, onto some weird news. Valve has a hero shooter in development called Deadlock. It's not a secret, people have known about this for a while, but not a whole lot is known about Deadlock. Well, there's currently about 20,000 people who've been invited to play in a closed beta, and while there is no official NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, which is something you sign to promise you're not going to spill the beans under legal consequence, instead of an NDA, the game basically just has a pop-up that kindly asks players to not publicly share information about the game. So, that's unconventional, going by the honor system. Good for you, Valve. It's odd, but okay. Well, what happened was a gaming journalist happens to be one of the folks who were invited to play the beta, and he went on to publish an article for The Verge talking about his experience with the game. And in this article, he cites how he signed no NDA, he agreed to no contract, be it verbally, be it through clicking accept or anything. He never agreed to abide by the please don't tell anyone notice. He also happened to post screenshots in his article that reveal his account information, which Valve then used to ban him from the beta in response. So the internet has reacted kind of weirdly about this, with some people really making a big deal about it. Some people are attacking this journalist, saying what he did was unethical. Others are attacking Valve for banning the guy when he didn't break any rules or NDA. Well, ultimately, there was no NDA. The journalist is correct that by publishing an article about this game, he did not do anything illegal. Valve has no grounds to come at him for breach of contract or anything like that. For instance, with Wizards of the Coast, Dungeons & Dragons, we saw them take aggressive legal action against someone who leaked their new book. They basically sent stormtroopers to his door, but that guy actually broke contract. Valve has no grounds here to do anything. There wasn't even a verbal agreement or consent of any kind from the journalist that he would abide by the rules. So again, legally, the journalist did nothing wrong. Most games that do these tests have players agree to an NDA for a reason. And for whatever reason, Valve did not do that. Some suspect it's some kind of 4D chess marketing ploy. But anyway, opposite side of things, Valve is allowed to ban anyone for any reason, really. That guy didn't pay any money, he was granted free access to a product. Valve is allowed to revoke that access at any time for any reason, and that guy has no grounds to contest it. And I think, hey, you don't respect us enough to follow our one rule, seems like a pretty good reason to ban someone. But back to the journalist. If the journalist did nothing illegal, did he do something unethical? Well, also no. There exist journalistic standards, a code of ethics, principles of journalism, and this guy was not in violation of any of them. Now, was it a dick move? Yeah, but that's not unethical. If someone asks you to keep your voice down because you're trying to sleep and you don't comply, that's not unethical. It's not nice, but it's not unethical. A journalist's duty is to inform the public about matters of interest. In fact, if a journalist gets access to information that he believes is newsworthy and would be of interest to his audience, it is his professional duty to report on it. A journalist's job is to seek truth and report it. Now, that said, there's journalism, and then there's entertainment journalism. Video game journalism especially exists in this weird space where journalists rely on having good relationships with video game publishers in order to have access to interviews, pre-release builds of games, and other hands-on experiences to be able to report firsthand on matters of interest to their audience. So, in this particular case, the author had to weigh the pros and cons. Is reporting on this story important enough to risk damaging my relationship with Valve? And by extension, The Verge's relationship with Valve, since they published the story. That's also on the editor, not just on the writer. Now, in my opinion, no, it wasn't worth it to potentially be blacklisted by Valve and potentially jeopardize his career in the video game industry, because will other outlets want to hire him if he brings this kind of baggage with him? All that just for an article that basically says, hey, this game has a closed beta test running right now and it's looking pretty good? Was that information that the public really needed to know right now? and couldn't wait a bit longer for? It would be different if this were an important story, like the kind of stuff that Jason Schreier does. He does real, hard-hitting journalism that just happens to be about the video game industry. He gets inside scoops at things going on within game dev studios, stories that the public otherwise would never know, never find out about, canceled projects, horror stories about specific devs or companies, information that is worth getting companies upset at him about. In the case of this story, I don't feel like the journalist was really trying to serve the public here. I feel like they were just trying to be the first to write about the game, the first outlet, the first journalist, and that's why some other journalists are mad at him, because I'm sure he wasn't the only journalist in the beta. And while other journalists did abide by the rule, the fact that he didn't mean he got out an article before anyone else. And in journalism, just like in racing, if you ain't first, you're last. That's why we tend to see embargoes within the field. A company is going to give access to all the journalistic outlets at the same time. They're going to give them all access to a game. But they put it under an embargo, meaning you're not allowed to talk about this until this day at this time. This way, there's no preferential treatment to any outlet. They all get to be first. They all get to post their story at the same time. It happens occasionally that someone breaks embargo, ends up being first. Everyone, all the journalists are mad at them. They tend to get blacklisted or graylisted after that for breaking the embargo. And so while Valve, yes, did handle this whole thing unconventionally, I think the journalist and The Verge knew well enough that what they were doing was going to be getting a leg up on the competition and probably would not be looked upon too favorably for it. But hey, those are my thoughts. What are your thoughts, folks? Sound off in the comments. Then, in some Witcher news, we learned that in The Witcher 4, Geralt will have some presence, but not too much. This is according to Geralt's voice actor in a recent video for Fall Damage. His exact quote was, "What we know is that Geralt will be part of the game, we just don't know how much, and the game won't focus on Geralt." We already knew that The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt was the end of Geralt's saga, so this is reconfirmation of that. He won't be the main character in The Witcher 4, sadly, for a lot of us. But at least we know that he will somehow be in the new game. Will he play an NPC? Well, I guess by definition he must, but an NPC that we meet, or maybe will he be a narrator? Will it be a cameo? Will it be something more? What do you folks think? Sound off in the comments, because Geralt, for a lot of people, carried The Witcher. Personally, I hope he's involved as much as possible, because I think that'll really help sell people on the new game. In some brief Dragon Age news, we got a release date trailer, and man, does it make such a better impression than the original reveal trailer. Reactions to the game after the first trailer were pretty negative. But if this was the first trailer, I think the narrative about this game would be different. It's almost as though the first trailer was modeled after the success of the new Dungeons & Dragons movie, which was kind of goofy, lighthearted, fun action-adventure, and it was just completely tonally wrong for Dragon Age. Dragon Age The Veilguard releases on October 31st. And that's going to wrap up this week's video, but do be sure to check out last week's video in which we gave our review of Diablo 4 Season 5. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my supporters. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and subscribe to join Rhykker's Raiders for more gaming content.